All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, the next installment of Autumn's Conversations. Today, we're coming to you live from SE Ventures Studio, where we connect with the community via podcast and live events. So for those who are just joining us for the first time, Autumn's a retirement platform. We're aiming to help people plan, manage, and enjoy their retirement. Today, I'm joined by Alex Manson, James Verner, and Dr. Kellie. We're talking about well-being and longevity. So, I'd just like to kick things off with a bit of audience participation. In the chat, you should be able to find the link to menti.com. So if you just go there and you key in the code, we've got some questions there just to get your thoughts focused on retirement and what it means to be living for longer, and what changes you might be willing to make today in order to ensure financial security in future. So I thought I'd just kick things off. Alex Manson is the lead at SE Ventures, and would you care to just give a brief introduction, say 2 minutes on what SE Ventures is about, what SE Ventures' mission is, and your role?
Sure. Hi, Matt. Hi, everyone, and looking forward to that conversation. SE Ventures, in a nutshell, has a mission to rewire the DNA in banking. By background, I've been a banker for a long time. I won't say how long, but at some point, got exposed to not just disruption by technology players, but also the importance of evolving banking as an industry to address the needs of clients and fulfill some of the societal roles that I think we're expected to fulfill as an industry. And came to the conclusion that transformation was a really hard thing to do just within a large organization, and so the idea came up to do it partly inside the organization, partly outside the organization, and that's really what SE Ventures is about. We run an innovation lab inside the bank, by the bank, for the bank. It's called the Accelerator. It is a great entrepreneur program. I have a quick plug for the FinTech Bridge, where we match use cases from the bank, but also from clients of the bank, to a whole community of fintech startups. Outside the bank, we build ventures, including an e-commerce platform for SMEs, including a banking as a service business, including an institutional proposition for custody of cryptocurrencies, including a payment aggregation business, and Autumn, which we'll spend a little bit more time on, and we deploy capital, obviously, to with our partners. We don't we only invest in our partners, but we invest in a number of companies with great capabilities that work either with us in the bank or with the ventures that we're incubating. That's SE Ventures in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. So on the subject of partnering, we have James Verner with us today. James leads Franklin Templeton's digital distribution strategy in the APAC. James, would you care to give us just 2 minutes on your background? I think, James, you are muted. It's the quote of the year.
I'll try that again. Thank you. So I think some similarities there from SE Ventures and Franklin Templeton's approach is that we're really spent the last 2 years looking for exciting technology companies who can further the distribution of savings and investment solutions for really the mass market. And in a similar way that SE Ventures to deploy capital into the exciting businesses that Alex has described, we've done something similar around the globe, be that in advisor technologies, insurance technology companies, wealth technology companies, and of course now creating an exciting partnership with Autumn. So it's in a similar vein as well. We've developed this outside of the main core Franklin business, and that's allowed us to deploy capital and spend time and resources thinking about the future distribution and how to help the end consumer.
Joining us. And finally, we have Dr. Kellie. And Dr. Kellie is a physiologist who's been working for over a decade with elite athletes around the globe. And today she's working in Brisbane in the corporate space, developing and supporting senior female leaders to achieve high performance in their careers. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Kellie. Care to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Mike. very good overview there. So my background is a physiologist and working in the elite sports space for state institutes and academies in Australia and internationally. So from that scientific background, I have now transitioned out into the corporate space. So in the middle ground there, I was starting to specialise in female physiology and women's health in particular, working with female athletes, and now bringing that knowledge across into the corporate space to work with senior executive women to find that same level of performance, and thinking of these ladies in their fast-paced and high-level careers as a corporate athlete in a way. So helping them find their optimal health and well-being so that they can manage their lives, but also perform optimally to their potential in their careers and in the workplace. So I'm working now with B Partners Group, and we have a suite of products and services that we're now delivering, so around women's health in the workplace.
That's some very positive feedback from some of the participants in your program. So yeah, I'm very much enjoying to hearing more about that. So just to kick things off and help get a sense of who our panelists are, could I start, Alex, by just asking, what does retirement mean to you?
So for a start, I have to admit that until relatively recently, I hadn't thought it through. And so I was in the same camp as I think the vast majority of the population, as we did our research on Autumn,
Yes.
who had been a little bit in denial about our advancing age, and hadn't thought through what retirement really means. When, how, how much in financial terms, but also what shall I do, etc., etc. And it's remarkable how sadly the fact that I was in good company with I think, again, the vast majority of the population, certainly in Singapore, where when we ask around, people haven't written a will, people haven't decided where they want to retire, let alone how, and so forth. As I started reflecting on it, partly prompted by our research and partly prompted by the Autumn proposition, the point is retirement is really an individual thing, and in my case, it probably means a pretty active retirement, by opposition to perhaps someone else who's just looking forward to leaving behind work and active life and enjoy a hobby, particular hobby that they've had for some period of time. So it can be very different. In my case, I envision a relatively active life. I think I'd like to remain professionally engaged for quite some time. I'm just not mentally ready to stop going. I think ideally a healthy dose of physical activity, sports. I'm an endurance kind of guy, and so a healthy dose of sports mixed in. And I'm hoping for a little more flexibility and the ability to mix these things. And in financial terms, there's just an element of ensuring that whatever it is that I have in mind, meaning remain professionally engaged, but perhaps in a different way and mixing up different things in life. Essentially, I'm in a position to support it until potentially very long, because dying is actually the very last thing I want to do.
Well, you could set some plans for after death if you're particularly bullish about
segue
it.
Into longevity and the fact that a lot of us will probably, but hopefully, but also probably live a lot longer.
Yes,
than the previous generations, and so how we deal with that, right?
Yeah. So indeed, a lot of our users have told us, when it comes to retirement, they are planning to not retire. They want to keep working. They want to stay active for as long as possible. What they want is more freedom to choose on what they are working. They'd like to be able to work on the passion projects. They'd like more time for exercise, travel, family, etc. But it's definitely not about slowing down. It's not about retiring or moving back from engaging with the community, engaging with life. It's actually about becoming more active.
Right.
It's
And
quite interesting.
it's actually remarkable the amount of retired people telling us that they've never been that active. They're more active.
Yes.
But in the same time, that level of activity does not suggest by any means that we shouldn't be thinking ahead of time of how you're going to support
Yes,
that
absolutely.
particular active lifestyle.
Yep.
Right? So remaining active doesn't means you have to plan for it.
Indeed, absolutely. How about you, James? What does retirement mean to you?
Well, believe it or not, I just recently moved into my late 40s rather than my mid 40s, and in my early 40s, which I guess for reference it,
Young
hadn't
man.
really hadn't given it much thought, but obviously, Alex and I are both in our mid to late 40s now, and really thinking about it a bit more. So there's definitely a point where you begin to sort of give it some further consideration. And I mean, it's a bit cliche, but travel and time with the kids, and I guess they'll be older then, they won't be kids, but and maybe a little bit of sport around the sailing and cycling, all of which requires not just the financial resources to do that, but also, as Alex points out, the sort of the health and flexibility and mobility to go with it. So it's quite a complex subject, I guess, and hard to guarantee all of those things happening. But certainly, for me, there's been a sort of waking up in the last couple of years that you've got to this now requires some serious attention. And it's interesting, isn't it, that even though a number of us on this call work in this profession, it doesn't actually lead to any guarantee that you've got the right plan. And even if you have that plan, how are you progressing towards it and keeping on track? So I think we all need a little bit of nudging and care and attention as we go.
Yes, there's an element with the mechanic doesn't work on his own car. And particularly in this industry where you get a lot of people who are high performers, we tend to think we're going to live forever. Is very challenging to contemplate the prospect of slowing down or having to do things differently. So denial is a strong
Denial and procrastination.
There's always something else to be doing.
But I think just building on James's point, you say mechanic doesn't work on his own car. That there's an element of that, but there's also an element of financial education, which is if relatively senior professionals in financial services feel that they haven't done the right thing, have procrastinated, have kind of messed up the financial planning.
Yes.
Then it's quite understandable that a vast majority of the population,
absolutely,
without that background, would obviously not even think of it. And so there's a whole duty to educate, I think.
Yes, and not even think about it, but also have very little understanding of whether they've done the right thing, are their plans on track, do they know, the confidence around this, peace of mind. It's very difficult. Absolutely. Dr. Kellie, how about you? What does retirement mean to you?
Well, for me, I'm a little bit similar. I haven't really thought of it as a tangible thing yet. As someone in my, I guess, late 30s, mid 30s, it still seems so far off, and the actual hard-nosed planning hasn't really entered my mind yet. But if I was to stop and think about it, I think for me, it is freedom in terms of financial freedom. I've always wanted to have some kind of charity or a foundation to be able to continue working and to give back in that time of my life. So that would be a goal. And also from a lifestyle side, health is so important to me, to enable a high quality of life in those later years. To enjoy life, but also to continue to travel and see all the places that I haven't yet seen by that stage. So, yeah, for me, it's a bit of a mix. It's the enjoyment, the quality of life, and the financial, I guess, the stability to enable all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So the stability, the freedom, it's a common theme coming through. So indeed, I'll put a couple of data points in here just to punctuate the conversation. So the Standard Chartered Retirement Survey, given the respondents from that, what we found was roughly 1 in 2, 43%, felt that they were on track for retirement financially. So there's a surprising number of people out there who feel like there's a big gap, either in their planning or in their resources, and main reasons for this, people felt that there was a perceived lack of investment opportunities that gave sufficient returns, lack of financial knowledge, lack of trusted advisors, and also lack of time. So people being busy, there's always something to procrastinate on, something else that could take your attention. So as the point that's already been raised, it's really important to start planning sooner rather than later. The sooner you start planning, the more likely you are to achieve the kind of future, be able to create the kind of future that is important to you. And each of us have our own desires and aspirations, and you need the plan in place to make it happen. So, bit of context, Autumn's mission is to help people create their best retirement. And of course, creating a retirement that's right for them is more than about just the financials. So we've released our beta just a couple of months ago. It's available in Singapore. And the app at this stage provides tools and recommendations to help people aggregate their wealth in a single view, so they understand where their finances are now, so they get financial clarity, to think about what kind of goals they want to set in future, and to map a path from here to there. And we've got some features in there to help people aggregate in one place, also things like their insurance policies, so they have all of their critical life documents in one place. And shortly we'll be able to enable sharing with loved ones and trusted advisors, so that you can have one central repository for all of your future planning, your data and the plans, and make it easy to share. So that's the background of where Autumn is at the moment. I'll get to where we're going in future more towards the end. But Alex, I was wondering, how do you see Autumn contributing to SE Ventures' mission?
So go back to the mission of SE Ventures, which is rewiring the DNA in banking, and this can mean different things to different people, meaning different types of clients. But generally speaking, an element of ensuring that we address the needs of clients the way they want to be served, as opposed to the way we need, as an organization, in order to essentially derive economic returns. And the more we asked around, the more people were confirming to us that it's a really big problem. The things we've said, yes, I'm procrastinating. No, I'm not ready. Yes, it's a big problem. Yes, I would love to have a trusted advisor, but no, I don't trust you, the bankers, or I don't trust you, the insurance policies providers, or the salespeople, or no, I don't trust wealth management either, because everyone's pushing a product to me.
Yes.
Right? And you made us reflect on the conventional setup of large organizations, which is we're organized in pipes. We manufacture something, not a widget in our case, mortgages, insurance policies, you name it, right? And then we sell it to people via channels, historically branches like bricks and mortar, and increasingly digital channels, but still channels. And that's a perfectly legitimate way to do business. But we found that in that space, it really did not address what people seem to be expecting from us, which is a much more horizontal, you could use the word holistic, approach to retirement planning across silos that normally don't really talk to each other, meaning banking, insurance, wealth, but also health, lifestyle, and a number of other sort of services, which at some point in that journey, people will need to think about in order to do the job. So hence the idea of approaching a business which is already an existing business in many organizations, be it Standard Chartered, Franklin Templeton, or indeed a lot of other large organizations, but approaching it fundamentally differently as an open architecture platform.
Yes.
With service providers that can plug in advice, but importantly, where a community can start comparing notes and derive trust from what the community is doing, and use the service, but in the same time learn and gain confidence in the process by knowing that the whole community is facing the same challenge and addressing it step by step. So Autumn is a great example of rethinking banking in arguably similar products, but in a very different mindset, with a very different mindset, in a very different way, and setting up essentially for us a business model which is completely different from what financial institutions historically have been doing.
Yeah. Well, personally, I've got to say, I'm very grateful SC Ventures is backing this particular idea. I'm very passionate about helping people find happiness at scale using digital technology, and this particular problem is quite wicked. We can see that retirement planning is, as it stands, is kind of failing roughly half the population. So there's a huge opportunity to
finding happiness is a problem worth solving.
Yes.
Right? In VC lingo, is your problem worth solving? Yes.
Yes,
it is.
absolutely.
Definitely a very big problem, very much worth solving.
Yeah. So James, what piqued FT's interest in what Autumn's doing?
Good question. So the retirement overall globally is one of the biggest strategic priorities for Franklin, and we've focused a lot, I guess, historically as other asset managers, focused on product manufacturing and almost leaving those building blocks in the hands of advisors and bankers to provide to their customers. And I think the industry as a whole has perhaps not focused enough on the end outcome. I don't think we really, as a group, as a cohort, focused on the outcome. And what Autumn's really sort of identified is delivering a better, dignified, well-planned retirement for its customers. Not just the journey to finishing work and packing up, but then looking after them after that point as well. And so our job as a product manufacturer and an investor in technology takes us so far, but the last mile, that last mile through to the end customer, what Autumn have done, what you guys have done, has really impressed us in terms of the customer experience. You've thought through what value looks like for the end customer, and not for the really wealthy private banking sort of customer, but the sort of the average, whatever average might be defined as, but sort of the mass market, where advice is sometimes hard to get to because perhaps a lot of the big institutions don't want to serve that sort of level of wealth, should we say. Autumn's been, I think, designed to democratize advice in retirement for the ordinary customer, whose problems are just as important and just as much a priority than anybody else, that can only be served through digital. So I think that was the first thing. It's clearly aligned with our strategy globally. This is a great play into Southeast Asia to start with, or Singapore and then Southeast Asia to start with, which again, I think retirement is an underserved subject or underserved market as it stands. And then your approach to a sort of design first principles. So let's not just make it sort of jargon and technical terms. Let's make it easy to understand, make it intuitive to use, so people come back and really get value from it. So I think it was a number of reasons that we were attracted to working with you guys. But fundamentally, we're aligned in the same way you are, which is to deliver better outcomes, better financial outcomes for the end customer.
Yeah, indeed. So just looking at the Mentimeter results from the first question we asked, about with advances in care and medical technology, we might live to be 100 years old. What changes would you be willing to make today to ensure you have financial stability in future? And by and large, respondents said that they would like to make their wealth work harder now. So this is
it's an interesting sort of outcome, and I love the zeros as well on meaning nobody's going to downgrade lifestyle in order to say fair enough. Yes. You shouldn't have to, and nobody is going to rely on children.
Yeah,
his or her children.
I thought that was surprising.
By the way, everyone, that's right. If you have young children and you're hoping that it work out this way, no, mine have grown up. love them dearly. They love me too, but it's probably not a great retirement plan.
Yes.
At this point.
Yeah.
So clearly focusing on making wealth work harder, and harder really means smarter in some ways. So we're going to get into the Autumn proposition now.
Yeah. So this aspect in particular is where we're very keen to have Franklin Templeton's support in the kind of the technology and the services underpinning Autumn on the wealth side. I was just wondering, what do you see Franklin Templeton providing in particular, James, to support the position?
What are we providing in particular? I guess it's probably best described as across three different sort of parts. One would be, I think, starting with something which we call our FT Academy, which is really a range of engaging, we believe, engaging and intuitive content to help the end customer understand, I guess, build a better financial literacy, right? And then that, I guess, if you have a enhanced financial literacy, you're on the journey towards financial wellness. So we have a professional global team bringing together relevant topics in different languages onto the Autumn platform to help people understand the importance of saving, of budgeting and planning, how markets work, how funds work, how ETFs might work. And so really sort of breaking it down into sort of non-threatening, sort of, if you like, content that people don't feel patronized. They're spoken, they're communicated in a manner and a tone that makes sense to them. So that's one. That's the sort of the content, the financial educational content side. The second part is then bringing our global multi-asset platform to bear. And what that's doing is it's helping people through a journey on saving or investing around the retirement sort of topic in a way that makes the most of our global research, our global manager selection, but critically on an open architecture basis. So we not only are able to pick Franklin products and funds on their own merit, but also third-party managers as well. And we think that's the right way to build a truly diversified, independent, and objective portfolio. So we're bringing that alongside the FT Academy, and then third, somehow this all needs to run. It all needs to run in a scalable way. It needs to be automatic. It needs to be real time, because that's the way you get scale into anything like this. And to do that, one of the exciting investments Franklin made a few years ago was an Asia-based wealth technology company called Quantafeed. And our partnership with Quantafeed is coming into this relationship with Autumn to really bring that all together. So if you think about it on a Franklin level, it's about content and financial products, but then an infrastructure through Quantafeed connecting to the Autumn technology platform, so that we can literally serve people with small saving contributions of $50, $100 a month, because without that technology, it's really not possible. So we're bringing all those things together with the great work that you guys have done and your roadmap ahead to bring something to market that really hasn't been seen before.
Yeah, in particular, we're quite excited about being able to bridge that advice gap to make sure that this kind of planning tools and services are available to everyone. They're cost effective and affordable. So quite excited about that. But also the open platform strategy that Franklin's willing to support. I felt that this was quite revolutionary. I didn't really get enough press about this.
And I'll interject and let James continue, because there's a compliment I want to pay to Franklin Templeton, at that juncture, which is we just talked about technical capabilities and products, and yes, they're great.
Yes.
And so we're very much looking forward to deploy that power and put it to use for the better good. What was special from our perspective was to find a kindred spirit. So like-minded people thinking of, indeed there's a gap. And indeed, the way we're conventionally set up does not address this gap.
Yes.
And so we need to move to a different approach in order to actually address people's needs and deploy all that technology in a bit of a different way. So open architecture, not exclusive, but importantly focusing on advice.
Yes.
And focusing on the outcome for a community as opposed to just the part I was describing earlier. And I think that as much as a lot of people would profess to be client-centric and focus on the needs of their clients, I thought Franklin Templeton was a rare case of actually being willing to sort of approach things differently and make this step. So well done, guys, and great to have found you there.
Yeah, absolutely. I second that. Be quite difficult for large organizations to consider doing business in different ways and trialing new propositions, which can be challenging to the old ways of thinking. Just how much work went on behind the scenes to create this opportunity, James?
It took a couple of days and we're done. It was all straightforward. I guess what so we started talking to each other about a year ago, right? And what had gone on in the previous 3 years was a lot of deep strategic thinking about where the market was going in different parts of the world, what the big issues were. So we concluded that retirement, it didn't take very long to understand the value of retirement and sorting that out. But we then started prioritizing different parts of the market and different types of technologies we thought would be the winning strategies in the future. So by the time we'd met, internally, there'd been 3 years worth of sort of setting the path. And so the timing was nice. Had we met 4 years ago, it would have been tougher. So the organization, I think, made I guess I would say this, but I think the organization made a good call 4 years ago of committing to this path, and took the exec and the board on that journey. And so that when we met, it connected. It was the opportunity of working together was fitting with our strategy. Now that said, obviously we see quite a lot of exciting opportunities on the first pass, and then you've got to dig a bit deeper, and you've really got to understand the team, the DNA, the cultural fit, not just the financial plans. The financial plans are on a spreadsheet, right? We can all look at those and have a view on those, but it's the cultural fit between SC Ventures, Standard Chartered Bank, the relationship there, the team, Mike, that you built and put around you, and the go-to-market plan. So all of those things have to line up for us to then be able to sort of so I can take the organization with me and commit. Once we got to understand what your value proposition was and how you were going about it and what was important to you, it actually became a fairly straightforward decision for us. I may not have felt like it, but it was a fairly straightforward decision for us to want to proceed. And so a lot of credit goes to you guys for putting that team and that proposition together. And then I guess a lot of credit goes to my colleagues for having spent a few years putting the strategy. And it was a nice timing in that sense.
Yeah, certainly we're delighted to find people who are thinking along the same way, such shared values around that customer centricity and the open platform strategy. It was a breath of fresh air. Yeah. So on the subject of aligning, Alex, how do you see Autumn complementing what financial institutions are already doing?
It's a general matter. The ventures we're building have an objective to enable financial institutions to approach clients and society at large a little differently. Mm-hmm. So the point of Autumn obviously isn't to reinvent the wheel. Financial institutions have already created. It isn't to engineer new financial products per se. It isn't to do things that financial institutions already do. The point of Autumn is to create a platform and hence a community of participants, of partners as well, that will deploy the technology that we financial institutions already have, mm-hmm. in a more effective way, because it's just more appropriate. Mm-hmm. It's more appropriate, and it's addressing a need better. So I could have given you that answer on a lot of the different ventures we're incubating, which is ultimately the point is less about a product or a technology, and it is a lot more about a business model. Meaning, how do I approach the problem I'm trying to solve? Mm-hmm. How do I approach resolving the need, solving a problem, or serving the needs of customers? And in that sense, it's adjacent to financial institutions and completely complementary.
Yeah. I like that you emphasize the point. We're not reinventing the wheel.
No, of course not. What would we?
Yes.
Yeah, what would we?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. A bit of a change in subject. So we've spoken a bit about retirement planning, the state of retirement planning, and how people find it difficult, and how a lot of people have yet to make any meaningful retirement plans, even by the age of 40. We spoke a bit about what retirement means in future for each of us, and a lot of it's about freedom and flexibility, but also wanting this kind of security, the financial security. There's been a shift in demographics over the last building over the last decade, what we see is that populations in Asia and Singapore in particular are rapidly aging. So there's a growing need to ensure that people are planning for the future and have their financial plans in place to support that. But on top of that, what we're seeing is COVID-19 is changing a lot of the landscape when it comes to economic pressures, people's relationship and expectations around health, wealth, work and happiness. Some people are planning to retire early now because life is short. And some people are planning to keep working because they're concerned about their financial stability. And some who would like to keep working are finding it difficult to keep a stable income. So a question for the audience. I was just wondering, how has COVID-19 affected your relationship with money? So if you can go to Mentimeter, the link is in the chat and you can fill that in.
I'm very curious. I'm very curious about the feedback on that because the answer is it has.
Yeah.
The question is how. We could comment quickly on the where do you plan to find happiness in retirement? Answer. I think it's also very consistent with I guess what most research would say. If you add up 29 and 29%, so almost 60%, will have said either one of family and friends or volunteering and paying it forward, which to me. The analogy, the common thread is connections.
Yes.
One way or another, it's about connecting with other human beings. And what medical research increasingly tells us is, by the way, the more connected you are, the likelier you are to live longer, happier and longer.
Yes.
Right? So as humans, we need connections to get a few things going in the body, which I won't try and explain, but makes us feel good and makes us live longer.
Next in SE Ventures is a dating service powered by the bank.
Here's an idea. You feel free to pitch it. But it's quite interesting that the poll sort of reflects that as well. Beyond some obvious other interests, such as pursuing your long-time passions, etc. A lot of this, and I bet you, by the way, in pursuing your long-time passions, I bet you that some of this has something to do with actually connecting with other people or team sports or the likes of things.
Yeah.
So goes back to the point of how you enable that and allow people to sort of work, remain engaged, remain connected.
Yes.
And the point here being remain connected one way or another, be it in the form of pay forward, volunteering, advisory work, helping others solve the real problem in the workplace, like what Dr. Kellie is doing, etc., etc. But whatever it is, it'll require financial planning.
Yes, indeed. There's a lot of noise in the press in the US at the moment about this resignation tsunami, a whole cohort of people looking to resign from their jobs because they're looking for more meaning now. They're wanting more connection now, but they want to find purpose. And this sense that the life is short, they want to be getting on with it. It's interesting to see, to watch how that might flow through to Asia. I think we're a little bit behind the curve. We can have a bit of time to see how that tsunami flows through. So, Dr. Kellie, I was wondering, just looking at over the last year or so, how do you think it's changed the way people think about their health?
It's interesting. I feel like just in general, from what we're experiencing here in Australia as well, it's a little bit more prevalent. It's definitely a topic of conversation. I think people are really starting to look at it and become more proactive about it. That's the general feeling that I'm getting. In my community, but also in my workspaces as well. I think sometimes we can be a little bit blasé about our health because we don't really see the impacts of poor health and poor lifestyle behaviours until years down the track. But I think what the pandemic has shown is that there are some critical factors that can come into play and have a bit of more of an immediate effect. And I think people are starting to look at this as something that they need to be considering now. Being more proactive is what I would say is the feel here, which is nice because that obviously has short-term effects, but then we're obviously going to have a better payoff down the track if, you know, towards the retirement years. If we are actually taking an interest in our health now, then we're getting a better payoff, similar to the financial situation.
What do you mean with being more proactive? If I can just drill on this a little bit, because it's going to mean different thing to different people depending on how healthy you have been historically, how healthy you are, your individual needs. What do you recommend people do, generally speaking? And maybe there's no generally speaking answer. It has to be bespoke. Right?
Yeah, it does to a degree, but to your first point, I think, you know, there's an acute and a chronic situation. So if we're talking about the pandemic, I think we've brought a lot of issues in our current lifestyle to light. And we're sort of taking notice now a little bit more of some public health awareness issues that have been around for a long time, but now they're starting to make sense and becoming more tangible as something that we can see as a benefit to us. In terms of what we can do, you know, there's a lot there as well, because we know that, you know, chronic disease is now largely coming from our lifestyle factors. So our exercise levels, our diet quality, the sleep, the environment that we're in, and also, you know, secondary effects like stress. And I feel like all of these have now come into the spotlight in the current situation. So research is now behind this in looking at, well, the pathways for chronic disease development, whilst they're long-term, they're also, you know, quite linked to the COVID-19 development as well. So if we can look at these lifestyle factors and implementing and improving them now, we're essentially getting a double whammy, I guess. If we're addressing from a health perspective, from either way, you're going to benefit the other one. So whether it's, you know, preventing chronic disease for the long term, or whether you've got more of a short-term approach to the COVID-19. But, you know, these are lifestyle factors that each one of us can start to address, you know, today.
Yeah.
Which is really nice.
It's super insightful, right? So you know, back to the autumn proposition and being holistic about things. So we've established that to retire well, you need money.
Yes.
Money. We've established that in order to be happy, you need to be connected to other human beings for the most part. And now we're also sort of adding the obvious, but you know, drilling a little. You need to be healthy.
Yes.
Ideally, right? Also, and what does it mean? So you've just touched on a number of topics, from stress to sleep to all the lack thereof, diet, exercise, all the lack thereof. By the way, there's such thing as over-exercising and creating injuries, which may prevent you from being high. But you know,
I'm just reminded that when I came into interview with SC Ventures, the day you were meant to interview me, you had just been hit by a bus. You had an accident just out cycling.
Yes. It was a cycling accident. So avoid these things. To live longer, you want to avoid these things.
Yes,
exactly. What I say, not what I do. But Kellie, it's a whole lot of things to think about, really. When we were reflecting on what you just said about, you know, from sleep to stress to diet to exercise, and how that essentially ties with financial planning, which we already established we had no time for. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I want to keep working and remain engaged. Right?
Yeah, it's a challenge. So we're saying, yes, we need more time for health, but we also need more time for planning. It can be quite challenging fitting in time for all this, but I think the takeaway from the first section is we need to make time for it, because if we want to create that retirement of our aspirations, then you have to make energy for it. So, it was good to see during the pandemic a lot of people going through lockdown and increasingly exercising at home and staving off lockdown boredom by getting out the yoga mats and or the cycling, stationary bikes, things like this. But it's also interesting to see the change in the way people are investing, particularly with the rise of trading platforms and things like this. Just briefly, James, what trends have you seen over the last couple of years that, particularly around the change in the way people are managing their money?
It's a big topic, and of course it does vary by which part of the world you're talking about. I suppose there's a bit of research that I've come across recently from PwC that I think made quite a stark headline. It was about 43% of those surveyed said they'd saved more since the beginning of the pandemic. Now, of course, we've all been somewhat restricted by our travel and even just leaving the house. So it's easy to see how that discretionary spend has dropped. So I think, and what's interesting on that stat is it's more around saving perhaps than investing. Now we've seen obviously sort of the Robin Hood sort of stories and people day trading from home, but I think as a broader trend, there is definitely a higher propensity to save than before. And I think once you've got into that habit, what we're then seeing is the next generation's looking for easy solutions. And this is not just about millennials, right? But generally speaking, we're seeing a new cohort of people who are moving from saving, not spending equals saving, and then saving, then sort of leading into investing. And I think there is a different sort of mindset around those two behaviors of saving and investing. And if I bring it closer to home into perhaps into Asia, I think of a project that we've been working on for a while now in Taiwan. There's been a model portfolio, multi-asset sort of offering launched by a bank in Taiwan, where nearly every single one of the customers, is under the age of 40, but B has never bought a wealth or investment product from that bank before. So their salary goes through there, their checking account, everything, their whole financial life is through there. But prior to, and this, I think this is less about COVID and more just generally around digital.
Yes.
That there is now the friction is being taken out of that process.
Yeah.
And if you make it easy for people, and for small, I'm talking about small, about $50 a month type savings, people are open to doing it if it's made easy for them. So I think there's two things going on. There's digital has taken the friction out. People have meant spending less. And what was really interesting in that particular project was that Taiwan is prolifically well known for high churn of its investments, i.e. people will buy and sell mutual funds inside a year. And I think the churn rate is something in the region of 90%. So it's one of the highest in the world. But every single one of these new customers that I described are contributing monthly and sticking. So it's almost beginning to change a behavioral set in a country where the conversation is about discipline and i.e. this discipline of saving regularly and focusing on long-term outcomes and taking the friction out. So I think across Asia, what I would say is it's seen easier ways of purchasing, be it saving and or investing. And the COVID overlay, if that's what we want to call it, has meant people have a higher ability or greater ability to put more to one side. Now, is it for retirement? I'm not so sure. I think possibly it's the start of a journey that says I need to put something to one side.
Yes,
James, if I listen to what you're saying and on savings versus investments, and put it back to the poll we just made, which is sort of 2/3, I think, fall in a similar camp. So a third, I have to plan for early retirement in case I lose my job, and another third, I have to reprioritize funds for retirement to meet my current needs. If I amalgamate these two, it's fear. Right? It's the undercurrent is one of I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I'm concerned. I'm fearful, and I guess the bridge here and what we're hoping to achieve is inspire confidence in people in an environment where fear has dominated for a variety of very understandable reasons.
Yes,
right?
indeed.
But money has been affected by this. And confidence may well come from, again, human contact, except again to what James just said. Human contact could be very different these days because we're getting increasingly comfortable with
digital, yes,
with social media, with platforms, and we see how we're conversing, in that case on LinkedIn for work, on Strava for sports, on Facebook, whatever, with people sometimes we barely know. But getting inspired by them, getting confidence from them,
yes,
in the context of what it is that we're doing,
yes,
which goes back to platform digital interaction in the context of Autumn, where we're hoping that a community of peers can not only share documents and valuable information which should never get lost with tier ones and advisors, but also compare notes with each other.
Yes,
all the time,
yeah, indeed.
And gain confidence from what everybody else is doing.
But also inform and inspire conversation with loved ones about sharing their dreams or their retirement plans, so that you can plan it together. I mean, what does a retirement mean if you're going to be retiring somewhere which may not be connected with your friends, or maybe not connected with family? It's important to get these conversations all joined up, but they're very difficult, particularly when fear is so predominant. Interesting point about the savings. This is certainly borne out. Just looking at the first 2 months of data collected on the Autumn platform, Autumn users seem to be fairly long in cash and otherwise investing in property in their CPF. So there seems to be a very strong movement towards having significant savings. But then that raises the question, is this really the best way to be managing their wealth? Is this making their wealth work harder, which is what we saw that most people would like to do in order to achieve the retirement that they want? So it would seem like there's a huge opportunity there to change the mindset around investing, change the mindset around planning for the future, and help people better manage their wealth so it's working harder for them. Yeah, it's very interesting. Okay. Do we have time to take some questions? Yeah, okay. So, okay, question 1. What is Autumn doing differently as compared to other banks? This is a great question. Would you like me to take this? Would you like to go for it?
Go.
Okay. So, Autumn, the main point of differentiation is that we're building a platform which is customer-centric, it's holistic, and an open platform. So the holistic piece is, you see a lot of advisors giving advice about the money, like what's the retirement plan you need? You need $3 million or whatever. And it doesn't take into consideration their lifestyle choices, which will have a significant impact on their future health, which will have a significant impact on the cost of care, which will or may not blow a hole in their retirement funds. So you can't consider planning just around the finances. It has to take into account the whole lot. Secondly is about the open platform. So making recommendations to customers which are really in their interest from a complete marketplace. So whatever the products are, rather than from a closed ecosystem of partners. So this helps users have trust that the recommendations that they're getting are indeed in their best interest and that the products are suitable for them. This is two points of differentiation there. Question 2. Other than prompting me to prioritize squirreling funds away, how does it help me with future value creation and advice? Yeah, okay. So using the Autumn app at this stage is really about financial clarity, getting financial clarity now. Understand, where am I right now? Put in place tools to automate the data aggregation of all of your information to keep it updated automatically and save you time around that. And secondly is about helping you think about the future. What kind of future do you want? What are the aspirations? What are the goals? And to take into account the values that are important, that go beyond just the wealth aspect, the financial aspect. And then a fairly standard retirement calculator which maps the path from here to there. Alongside this is the financial education, the literacy content, and then the nudges to help people move along this retirement journey on a weekly basis. We're not expecting people to be doing something every day, but certainly every week, so that over time you're building up your understanding about managing your wealth, you're building up your understanding about what's important in retirement, you have a clearer set of ideas about what you want in future, and you have more confidence about the path you're taking from here to there, and that you're moving along it, and you're motivated to keep going. Yeah.
Great question for Dr. Kellie. Sometimes I do feel, can we really retire without a compromise on our lifestyle, health or wealth? And I'd love to hear what you have to say. People ask, how do you work all the time and exercise all the time? Because, you don't understand. If I did not exercise, I couldn't work.
Yes.
And so there, the two flip sides of the same coin in my mind. But Dr. Kellie, over to you.
Yeah, so just to clarify, was the question around how they can continue to maintain their lifestyle.
So you may not be able to read it like we do. So
No.
what you do is inspiring. What would you say come first, health or wealth? How can we balance this? Sometimes I do feel, can we really retire without a compromise of our lifestyle?
Yeah, a really, really great point. And I think from the outset, if you look at it quite broadly, in my mind, I think what good is finance and wealth in retirement if we get to retirement age and we're so chronically ill and diseased that we only have a couple of years of life left, quite bluntly. So for me, it's all about the longevity there. So we don't want to roll up to the door of retirement and, we're scraping through and we're actually in quite a poor state of health, that retirement then is not the retirement that we dreamed of. We have the money and maybe we can pay for the healthcare, but we don't have the quality of life or that, freedom and independence that we might want. So for me, it's starting now, and exactly the same as finance. It's playing the long game. And the best thing is that, the chronic disease, they're largely preventable. So no matter if you're a young person now, a teenager and above, you can take that preventive approach and, through your lifestyle choices and behaviors that you're making now around those key areas that we've already mentioned, you are putting yourself in the best place that you're going to prevent the majority of these chronic illnesses from happening to you, which is great for your health and well-being, but also coming back to a finance perspective, you're reducing the risk of being hit with these bills. And even if you are in old age now, so if you're approaching, middle or older age, coming closer to retirement, it's preventable. So again, I come back to that. It doesn't matter what age you are, you can start to make these small habit changes in daily life that are going to reduce either the severity of diseases that you have, prevent further diseases. So most people, when they're older, they have more than one chronic disease. And so you can prevent, these worsening or obtaining more. So, for me, it's start now, because prevention is usually better than a cure in terms of cost effectiveness and also the impact on our health.
Yeah.
So I would build it into your lifestyle. That's it.
So as with the retirement planning, getting on top of the health sooner rather than later is definitely beneficial. Prevention is better than the cure. And I like this point about what good is having wealth if you're not healthy enough to enjoy it. I think all of us are looking forward to, in retirement, this freedom, and travel's a big part of that. So it's really important having that health in place so that we are fit and able to go out and have those adventures. Mm-hmm.
Last question is going to be a good segue for you, Mike, to outline the future roadmap a little bit on around health. So the question is a very fair question. With the wealth of apps, how do you envision autumn value adding? So in other words, lots of apps around.
Yes.
How do you prioritize them, and why should I prioritize autumn?
Yes.
As one of the many apps. And for a start, I don't think there's that many apps that do what autumn does. I can't think of. Yeah,
yes and no. There are a lot of apps that do individual verticals in
exactly,
financial institutions, and the bank does certain aspects of retirement planning particularly well. The question is, does it make sense to do them in isolation? You really need to be stitching them together. It needs to be plugged together, and the data between the different silos needs to be connected, so you have a complete understanding of your health, your wealth, your insurance, your lifestyle, and the way that those interrelate with each other. And you need to incorporate all of those aspects into your planning to make sure that you can create the future that you want.
Which I think really is the reason to prioritize autumn over the many other apps you have. It's the stitching it together in a nutshell. So maybe quickly, what does it do today, and what would it do down the line? So today,
sure.
Status.
Yes.
Where are we?
Okay, so today what we're doing is we're just in beta. We've been there for 2 months, and we're doing the financial clarity, aspiration setting, retirement calculator, insurance policy upload, sharing with loved ones.
And also the ability to upload your net worth, link your bank account,
bank accounts,
do all those things. So it's in there, safe,
single view of all your wealth in one place, a single aggregated view.
Repository of all important documents.
Yeah, indeed. And kept up to date automatically where possible. So if you connect your bank accounts, we can update that for you in the background. So you're not having to continually update the spreadsheet, just save time, but also avoid fat fingering and all these sorts of issues. But also incorporating things like your property, other investments, alternative investments, CPF and things like this.
Any banker coming to me will come with whatever picture he or she has.
Yes.
How about the real estate? How about this? How about that?
Yes.
How about this life policy? So that aggregation is absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And also across multiple financial institutions, and you deal with multiple banks, as most people do, particularly as you're getting older, and people with more wealth tend to bank with more institutions. Having a single view which goes across all of them, regardless of whether it's in Singapore or overseas, is very helpful. Okay, I'm conscious we are running short on time, so we're going to be putting out slides following this presentation or this session. So I would just ask at this point two things. One, if you are interested in setting up and creating the future that's right for you, creating your best retirement, please head to the App Store, search for Autumn Life, download the app, get started. It's sooner rather than later is much better, but also it's never too late to get started. For potential partners, people interested in working with Autumn, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Okay. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to SE Ventures Studio. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone.